15 seconds. Okay. Let's see. Good evening. Good evening. Good evening. Good evening. Good evening. Okay, we're live. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening, everyone out there in La La Land, in Facebook land, in YouTube land, in other platforms. Good evening to you. This is Leo Gilling, and I'm coming to you this evening live from my studio. But we have several persons on board this evening that we are going to be talking a little bit, well, a whole lot about vaccine hesitancy. But before we get into all the details and all the questions that you will have and all the information that will be shared this evening, let's have a few words of remarks from our Consul General to Miami, Mr. Oliver Mayer. I got it right this time.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Leo. And good afternoon to everybody joining us. I want to recognize, of course, Dr. Blake, Dr. Ellis, Dr. Biggs, Dr. Tate, Dr. Symes, Dr. Frey, and all the persons watching us from around the world, especially here in the diaspora. This is such an important conversation. It's the second time around. We did this about 2 months ago, and the feedback was overwhelming, and persons are interested in vaccine, and we recognize it's so important for us to be discussing vaccines, the level of vaccination, and some of the factors that are inhibiting persons from actually taking this important step. We're seeing right now, as we speak, the numbers are increasing throughout the United States. And I'm sure what you'll hear tonight is that it's increasing in states that have lower levels of vaccination. So it's so important for us to become vaccinated. And I want to really just to thank our esteemed panel of doctors, especially from the Caribbean, primarily Jamaican, and I believe one Bahamian doctor on this esteemed panel. And the last time, the information was so well received that we thought it was important to bring it back and to allow persons to ask questions from the Jackson Health System group and just feel out all the concerns that might be there, all the issues that persons may have. Just ask, use the opportunity to ask, have them answered, because it's really, really important. We feel that persons take an important step of being vaccinated. So we want to really encourage everybody, those persons who have not yet logged on, just reach out to your friends, invite them to be a part of the conversation, ask the questions, and let's get our people, our family, our friends, our relatives, our community vaccinated. So again, thank you. And I wanted from the consulate just to say a big thank you to the medical fraternity, both the nurses and doctors, for the work that you have been doing on the front line during COVID. You have really represented us so well. And we have had, every time we've asked for your support, in help back for homeland Jamaica, or just providing medical advice, you have always stepped up to the plate and led with distinction. And I want to thank you publicly for the work that you're doing and that you continue to do, because we continue to see the challenges, especially with the Delta variant coming to the fore, that we still need you to continue to lead from the front. So thanks again. And again, everybody listening, from the Consul General, I'm encouraging you to take the important step of becoming vaccinated. Back to you, as I did 3 months ago. And I encourage most of the persons here at the concert have been vaccinated. And I'm encouraged by some of the numbers. I think we're about at 60% here in Florida. But we want to see those numbers go up. We want to be hitting 90%, 95%. We want to get those high numbers going. And of course, we'll talk a little later about what's happening in Jamaica. But back to you, Mr. Moderator. Thank you, everybody. And again, get all your friends on this program so we can have this important conversation, get your questions answered, and get our community vaccinated. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. What a wonderful set of words there. Thank you so much, PG Mayor. Very, very important that we take heed of the CG word. At this point, I'm going to ask everyone so that the audience gets an idea of the persons that are on the panel this evening. I'm going to ask you each to introduce yourselves, tell us a little bit about you. I know I'm going to start with Dr. Biggs first, because she is the one who started talking to me as soon as she got on this evening. Let's go with Dr. Biggs.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome. My name is Dr. Carol Biggs. I'm the Senior Vice President and Chief Nursing Executive at Jackson Health Systems. I am very happy and honored to be here because the topic of public health and taking care of ourselves and our community is very important to us. And we really, we're really on the front line and fighting the good fight, and want to make sure we bring to everyone in reach of our voice all the information. Ask all your questions tonight. We will answer everything. Anything we don't have the answers to, we will get back to you or refer you to other sources. But thank you so much for tuning in.
Dr. Blake.
Good evening. My name is Dr. Jay Blake. I'm a clinical pharmacist at Jackson Memorial Hospital. I've been working at Jackson Memorial for about 25 years, and it's also an honor to be here to discuss this about vaccination, and also to talk about like misconceptions that people have about the vaccines and the hesitancy of not getting the vaccine. So I'm here to provide information about the vaccines or any questions that you would have.
Okay, thank you so much. Just wanting the audience who are Jamaicans to know that Dr. Biggs is from Kingston, Dr. Blake is from Lucy. From Lucy in Hanover.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And let's go to the young lady, Dr. Laurel Robinson.
Good night, everyone. It's such a privilege and an honor to be here, and also just to be a part of this movement that really spreads the awareness of vaccination. My name is Dr. Laurel Tate Robinson. I'm originally from Barbados, but very much a Caribbean woman. And I am the president of my company is HBH Inc., which is Healing Broken Hearts. I'm a Christian counselor and a school psychologist.
Oh, wow. Great. Let me go to Dr. Stephen Symes.
Hello, everybody. And again, it's wonderful to be in such great company online. Sorry we couldn't be in person. I'm Stephen Symes. I'm an associate professor of medicine at University of Miami Miller School of Medicine. And my practice is at Jackson and UM. I take care of HIV patients. I've been doing that for about 20 odd years now. So I'm used to dealing with really challenging issues and challenging conversations and having great success with my patients. I also spend 2.5 days a week working in a free clinic in North Miami called Center for Haitian Studies. And that's again to provide care for those who don't have insurance. Very happy to say we also give vaccines there. We give the Pfizer vaccine and the Johnson & Johnson free of charge with University of Miami. And again, it's just a pleasure to be here and talk to you all and spread the word to our audience.
And he's a Kingston man.
Kingston, that's it, holding up the fort.
But the only person I don't know where he's from yet is Dr. Ellis, because I know that Dr. Robbins is from Barbados. All right, so Dr. Ellis.
Hi, good evening. I'm Dr. Horace Ellis, and I am a psychiatric nurse practitioner for over 25 years now, and I am from Portland, Jamaica, the rainy parish. And so I've been practicing at Jackson now for about 22 years. And what I do is take care of psychiatric condition across the spectrum. I deal with everything psychiatry. And I am honored to be here, and I am able to answer some of the question. You know, COVID have created a very, very big dent psychiatrically, psychologically, the stress, people who already have psychiatric and psychological problems, their problem has become worse, and people who are otherwise healthy have developed psychological problems because of the stress and the uncertainty and the disruption of their life, and having a lot of difficult time coping. And so, you know, hopefully I can answer some questions about, you know, getting vaccinated, of course, so we can get back to normal lives from a psychological comfort level. So very happy to serve.
That's great. I'm, you know, this is a conversation. That it's not a presentation that you're going to present to anybody out there. We are here to answer questions, to answer your questions out there. And I have questions that I'm going to ask. At this point in time, I'm going to set up a little bit of discussion so that we can kick off the whole thing with something that is of use for the discussion. All right. So I am aware. I am not a doctor. I am not a nurse. I am not a psychologist or anything. I am just somebody here who loves to talk or love to talk. And I did some reading, and I also found out that in 1918, there was a major flu. It's called the Spanish flu. It ran from 1918 to 1919, and then it went into some kind of recession somewhere. You know, we didn't find it again. It came back based on what my reading was in 1957, in 1968, and in 2009. It's the H1N1. That's not a visa, by the way. That's a virus. And so my concern when I started reading was, how did this Spanish flu that killed between 1989 and 1919, it killed 50 million people across the world. The first 6 months, it took 25 million, and then the other 6 months, it got another 25 million. The death toll has gone crazy since then because it has not left us. It's still here, which is a concern of many of us, you know, people in the medical field and people who are not. How did it end? My reading says that it ended because everyone who had it either died or they developed some immunity. Now, I would like to know, what is this immunity? How is this immunity related to our current pandemic, if that's possible? And will people develop that same kind of immunity to you know, fight against this disease, this virus? Is that a good question? Is that a good question?
Yeah, good question. Yeah.
Oh, yes.
It's a great question. I'm going to, as an infectious disease specialist, and I'm going to take a little bit of a swing at that multifaceted question that you have bold us towards us, right, with vivacity.
Yes.
So first of all, again, we live in a very different world these days than we did back in 1918 when the Spanish flu epidemic was. People live in conditions where, again, the global issue, right, of people moving from place to place easily, quickly, boundaries, borders are crossed, and that actually really facilitates spread of and transmission of the virus, and that in an amazing way. And so if you think about what happened, you know, almost a century ago, when people were very much in their communities and didn't travel much, that's not the reality of the world. And this virus had spread with frightening speed across the world. And that's something, again, to really take note of. The other thing is that we know that these viruses mutate, and some of these mutations don't work, right? They will shut down the virus, but others can actually make them more infectious and contagious. And with the coronavirus, what we're seeing right now, it is having this effect of moving in the wrong direction, right? It's becoming, through the Delta variant that we saw in India, more contagious and more infectious. Now, there may be a point where we have back mutations, reverse mutations that make the virus less infectious, but we're not there. And we're expecting, within the next few months that we're going to see other surges here in the United States and in other parts of the world. And we just don't want to be in a situation like we saw in India, where, again, a lot of people die, overwhelming the medical system. And even worse, or just as bad, I would say, not even worse, but just as bad, we have to go back into lockdown and isolation and lack of earning potential, closing schools, all of which I think we're all really heartily sick and tired. So that's a little bit of a perspective, both from an infectious disease point of view, but also from a public health point of view. And hopefully it answered part of your question.
Excellent. Anyone want to take another stab at it?
Yeah,
Well,
I'd like to say.
I'm going to take a different approach, just to talk actually about the history of Jackson Health System. Jackson Health System opened June 25th, 1918, during the Spanish deadly influenza pandemic. And, it started with only 13 beds. Now we're up to like over 1,500 beds. But we started during the pandemic. And it's interesting that Jackson, we took such a forceful role during the pandemic of opening our doors, administering vaccines, reaching out to the community, ensuring that we address the disparities in our community. So Jackson, our percentage of the amount of Black and brown people that were vaccinated, we were far above anyone else. So I do have to commend our organization for that great work. And it's just interesting that during the second pandemic, Jackson is opening the first, hospital here in Dade County in quite a few years, with the Doral Hospital is going to be opening August 2nd. So it's just interesting. Jackson seemed to open hospitals during pandemic. Just thought that was
a good thing. It's a good thing. We need it because we need that kind of that foundation, that just in case anything worrisome happen again, we'll have some space.
Exactly. So every 100 years, yes.
Anyone else wants to take a stab at that?
Yeah, I'd like to say something.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't think that we've really reached the rate that we have like that herd immunity, because even as the Consul General was saying, 60% of Florida has had the vaccine. With we still have certain states that only have like 40% percentage rates of vaccine, which is a low. And those are actually those hot spots that you're seeing that are coming down with those Delta infection rates. So that's the important thing, is that we still need to promote the vaccinations. Mask wearing is very important. Also, the distance is very important for the population, so we can hopefully get to that point where we do have like a herd immunity.
Okay, excellent. I know the kind of questions that I'm going to have for Dr. Robinson and Dr. Ellis, but just bear with me a minute. There's one question that keeps popping up every time that I speak with someone about vaccinations and virus. The one question is the one hesitancy question is, how is it that it took them 9 months to create a vaccine, right? When the one in 1918, them from 1918 to 1942 to build to create a vaccine that didn't even come to what what needed to happen. So tell us, give them an answer, give the people an answer about why should they trust that's popped up in 9 months.
I'll take a little swing at that. Okay. So I think it's really important that when you think about the answer to that question, you think about the history of how studies and vaccines are, on vaccines or any type of medicine are usually done. And they're usually done in sequential phases, right? And each of those phases take about 2 years. So there are what we call these phase 1 trials, phase 2 trials, and then phase 3 trials, right? And if you think about it, each of those phases, if you do one after the other, takes a couple of years. What they were able to do when they realized we were going to have this huge pandemic coming very, very fast, and we didn't have very good defenses, is instead of doing these trials in sequence, they ran them all together in parallel. Oh. And so with that methodology, as well as some new technology in terms of making the vaccines, they were able to move this 6-year process down to 9 months. Now, at any point in that sequence, there was preparation, just as we've done before, to shut down a trial if you found safety issues or harm issues. But as they were doing each of these studies in sequence, they never found any significant safety or harm issues. And they found that those vaccines really worked. And so in very simple terms, it's by pouring a lot of money, effort into it, building the factories before the first phase had even been done, and telling the drug companies, you know what, if the vaccine doesn't work out, we'll still reimburse you. That's how we managed to be able to get these trials done and have production capacity in 9 months, as opposed to 6 or 7 years.
Go ahead.
If I may add, in addition to that, remember, historically, vaccines are usually made from the virus, right? The dead or weakened virus. So all that takes a lot of time to actually, the work that it takes to isolate, and how they, the factory that only one virus can be done in that one place at that one time. So that too takes a lot of time. So this vaccine is not the live or the dead or weakened virus. Yes. So that also makes a difference in how it could be done a little more swiftly than the standard vaccine preparation.
I don't have any couldn't find any reading. I couldn't find any reading. Could you mute for me? Yes. I couldn't find any readings about it, the other pandemics, or that, what were the social emotional effects on the population. I couldn't find anything, that was significant to be able to compare with. But, I can speak on Jamaica that I've seen so much more going on in our community. And I don't know if it's the media that's propagating and proliferating. There's so much more going on. Young kids. Could you mute me? I'll mute you. Yes, 4 minutes. Yeah. There's so much things going on that kids committing crime. You see that in the news every day. Parents hurting kids hurting parents, pastors much getting involved in communities, and pastors going. I mean, it seemed like everything just topsy-turvy. I am actually talking through to Dr. Robinson and Dr. Ellis. Okay. Yes, please tell me what's going on. I know it Barbados too, so tell me.
Yeah, it's everywhere.
It's everywhere, yes.
Yeah. Even here in pockets in urban areas, you see a lot more stressors and frustrations and crime rates going up. And this is just informally but I want to address it first by kind of going backwards. When I thought about, this forum today and looking at vaccines and mental health, I first had to look at what is mental health. And I see mental health as the emotional, psychological, and especially social well-being. So it affects how we think, how we feel, how we behave. All of that is affected. So there are things that can cause us to have stress. And they could be like, for example, from social situations in our lives, from financial situations in our lives, from also biological too, would affect your mental health, but even like your lifestyle choices, etc. So having said that, I'm going to get to the point, but there are 5 main things that I think that are unique to the pandemic that really impacts, our mental health being or mental health altogether. And that is the stay home order that came, with the feelings of isolation and anxiety. And like what Dr. Ellis said, it really heightened a lot of that symptomology with people, especially those that had mental health problems before, that really increased. Number 2 was economic instability. So all of these things help to contribute to the stressors that we have and the frustrations in our community. So for example, we see the loss of jobs, the uncertainty of jobs. People don't know where they're going to sleep. There's increase in homelessness. I mean, it goes on and on with the food. We see the long lines for food, for the food banks, et cetera. So there's some fundamental basic issues that people are having and experiencing, whether they were in the poverty range before or middle class, but it's affecting all of us. The third thing is the domestic unrest, which is what you're alluding to. Being in that time period of the pandemic, especially when we were all home. And so you would see the increase of domestic violence, the increase of parent-child stressors, just people in the home having more, not everyone, but of course there were some wonderful things that happened where people were creative, they had more time together, but then on the flip side of it, the maladaptive side of it, there were so many that had that increase in frustration. So that's number 3. Number 4 is the illnesses and the death and people dealing with grief. It is astounding. You have many people that are still affected by the deaths with COVID. And so I had a coworker that said to me, there were 6 people in his family that recently died, and these were close people. So imagine you were continuing to function like normal, but really and truly, you're not functioning, you're not concentrating, you're stressed out. The simplest things get you annoyed and irritated, and that affects the work life, that affects your home life. So that's very important. The grieving process that, we're still dealing with as a nation, as people because of this. And the 5th thing I want to add is just the exposure to a lot of the negative things in the news about COVID and about the increase in crime, et cetera, and how that has really impacted our society. So when we think about that, that's part of the reasons why I believe that crime has increased, et cetera. The good thing about vaccination is that for those who have, mental health issues, et cetera, that hopefully it will reduce some of the stress, the anxiety, the fear that would lead to something that could be more maladaptive or not functional in their everyday life, but that will be reduced and we will have the opportunity to socialize more as we're doing now. Those are factors that I believe can really be the mental health benefits that comes with the vaccination.
Dr. Ellis, she named 5 things here and very, very the stay at home, economic instability, domestic unrest, illness and death, exposure. And it's not one coming at you at one time. It's all 5, right? So it's a brand new arena we're dealing with. Kids now are at home Mom is at home, dad is at home. They're not accustomed to being at home together, and they're probably happy the first 2 days, and then everything gets sour the next few months, right? That's what you're explaining, Dr. Robinson, right?
Yes. Whether you're functional or you're in a dysfunctional family, that is part of what happens. How you cope with it is a different story.
All right, Dr. Ellis.
Yeah, I really can't really add much to what Dr. Robinson said, except to say, to step back a little bit. Any society you go into, whether it is a progressive society or developing society, there's always undercurrents of misgivings and put it in sort of low, what we call undercurrent paranoia about, governmental agencies and conspiracy about what's going on. And people live with that all the time. And all you need is a spark to kind of light that, such as a pandemic like we expose. And so all of a sudden now you have all these conspiratorial kind of ideas come into fruition, kind of supporting where is this virus coming from. It depends on what culture you're from. It's it's the government trying to get rid of us, or in some ways. That in itself also create a lot of unrest, uneasiness among people. Anxiety starts to set in. The fear of the unknown, what is going on. People just become so uneasy, paranoia build. In psychiatry, we have a saying that all of us function on a continuum from neurosis to psychosis, which means any one of us on this panel at any time can have a mental health situation. Doesn't necessarily mean a mental health disorder, but you can have a mental health condition. As a matter of fact, 1 in 4 people across the world will suffer a mental health condition in their lives, in their lifetime. So if we have 6 people on this panel here, you 1 or 2 people may experience that. So if you're talking about vulnerability for whether it's social stress, economic stress, and all that, people are already vulnerable. This pandemic comes and it just kind of implode that, because people are already uneasy for a lot of reasons. In Jamaica, if we're talking about that, we do suffer from a sort of a higher level of economic instability, social instability. And now what happened, you further take away people's, however they can make a livelihood, which for a lot of people is hustling on the streets and however it is, the freedom is now, you have to stay home. So how am I going to feed my kids? How am I going to take care of my family? The extra pressure that is placed, I think Dr. Robinson alluded to the fact that now you have people are isolated, children at home, and parents are being told to basically teach their kids. They might not be teaching them the academic portion, but they have to teach them how to log on to the computer, and they have to make sure that they stay online. And the kids there's not enough resources online for the kids. So the parents are, kind of put in this situation. So they get anxious because they don't know, they don't know how to get the resources. Some of them don't even have the Wi-Fi and all of that. So if you're talking about stress and anxiety, these are normally, reasonably healthy, functional people, as long as they have their livelihood and their resiliency. They can kind of, make way, but it was taken away. And so what happened? People resort to, crime, stealing. The stress level goes up, where domestic violence and other kind of violence against children and partners have an increase. Those people are already vulnerable. If their environment was stable, their environment is no longer stable. So their vulnerability rate just kind of fall off the chart. You know, they become more depressed. Now they have to be taking medication, whereas they probably didn't need it before.
They're not going to take it. In Jamaica or in the Caribbean, they're not going to take those kind of medication because it's something to do with men.
Exactly. So if you have an unstable person out there in the street, so you're talking about, they probably won't take the medicine, but they get very depressed and commit suicide.
Right.
Yeah, you know, or they're subjected to violence, you know, they become homeless on the streets, and you know, for a variety of reasons.
Your point is well taken, Dr. Ellis. It's you know, I can see, and Caribbean people already have a tolerance, a high stress tolerance based on, you know, but now it's all of these 5 things plus the conspiracy coming all at you at one time. You know, where do you go? I want to respect the persons who are on Facebook and YouTube, and I want to take a question from there. There's one person who asked a question: if someone has many allergies, is it safe for them to take the vaccine?
I'll answer that.
Come on, go ahead.
Yeah, it's safe. We do take precautions. It depends on what type of allergy they do have. If it's based like on a certain medication, but most of these vaccines are actually high technology. They actually have 2 variants of the vaccine, which is the mRNA vaccine, and then you also have like a vector vaccine. So most of those, these are more technological. They're not really, per se, if you're allergic to penicillin or sulfa, you wouldn't have that type of reaction. But we do have precautions, and we do have like medications that we can give the patient afterwards.
Okay, great. Speaking of conspiracy, all right, I want you guys to kill this conspiracy right now. There's, you know, I don't know the truth. There's some people who says the vaccine that we're taking have the virus in it, has the virus in it, and some people said no, there's no virus in there. So guys, help us here, because that's one of the reasons. Yes, Dr. Blake. That's one of the reasons why people are not taking it, because they don't want the virus in their bodies. And if it's not, you know, tell us why not.
Yeah, that's a common question, because a lot of people think that there is the virus that's already in the vaccine, but that's not true. It's different from like the flu vaccine, which the flu vaccine has like a component of the flu virus in the vaccine. This technology, like I said before, there's actually 2 mechanisms that these vaccines work. The Pfizer and the Moderna one works on a technological sequence, which is called a messenger RNA, which in layman's terms is, it gives the genetic code in the vaccine. So when you do get the vaccine, it's almost like a blueprint, and that blueprint enforces the defense factors in our bodies to build up the defense, and also the antibodies, and also those memory defenses that will help fight an infection that comes back again. Now, the important thing about it is the reason why you need to get a second dose, because even though you receive the first dose, you are vaccinated, but if you receive a second dose, you're actually fully vaccinated against upcoming variant. I wouldn't say variants, but if you do come down with the virus, the symptoms are actually going to be lower, and the hospitalization rate will be lower.
Okay, excellent. I think we're all okay with that answer. Right? All right, so there's another question from YouTube. We are pushing fetal tissue in vaccine on God's people. All right. Anyone wants to take that? Go ahead. Yeah, man, go ahead.
I think that maybe Dr. Sainz might help me, but I think that might have been with the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. that there was some type of like embryo, but I'm not really too sure on that. But I know the certain churches, I think the Roman Catholics were saying that their parishioners should get the vaccines.
Okay.
So I think I think some of the misinformation that we've heard comes from very basic misunderstanding about how this process works. And you know, a lot of our knowledge, a lot of what we know from through science and testing and stuff comes from studies that go way back into embryonic lines, lineages, processes, and so on. But I can tell you for sure that the two vaccines that we have, the Pfizer and the Moderna here in the United States, you know, have no relationship whatsoever to being derived from embryonic fetal tissue. And one of the things that's really important is if you have some doubts about what it is that you're not trustful of or you're distrustful of about the vaccine, it's really important to sit down and have a one-to-one conversation with someone that you trust who has some knowledge. And that could be your doctor, your nurse practitioner, your pharmacist. And they'll be able to answer your questions one-to-one, not a one-way answer where I'm trying to guess what you're asking me, but there's a give and take and an exchange of information, which I think is so crucial. And this happens over and over and over for me. I have patients who come in to see me all the time. They have questions about fertility, about, you know, can I breastfeed? Can I, if I've been vaccinated, can I get pregnant? And again, it's sitting down and having a back and forth conversation where we're able to work through and solve those issues. So in the age of the internet, too often we settle on these one-liners or unidirectional pieces of information, and that just doesn't work with such an important decision as getting a vaccine.
All right, and I'm gonna go to another question. It's two questions that came in. It looks like from two different persons, but they're along the same line, and I probably will be able to answer the first one. Are we correlating mental illness with not wanting the vaccine? No, I don't think that's what we're saying. We're saying, you know, that the more we get rid of the virus, is the better able we are to get back to our normal selves and our lives. That's what we're saying there. Because
yeah, I think the stress, the built up, pent up emotional stress and anxiety that comes from the restrictions that we have from the virus. I think that you know, getting the vaccine would give us sort of this freedom to start going back into our livelihood, because we are a social being. As human beings, we are social beings. We are not designed to, you know, stay in the house. Back in the caveman era, they sleep in the cave, but they go out and they hunt and they socialize. So interestingly enough, just this week, France announced that, you know, they were going to take some greater steps to sort of encourage people to vaccinate so that they can become more social. And so basically their sites for signing up for vaccination is actually crashing, because so many people are signing up to get the vaccine because they want to be able to get on with their social lives. So it's a sort of like this freedom and liberation to get back to normal life, normal social life, which socialization decreases anxiety and stress and generate the happiness, the endorphins that we have in our system, that you can go to the bar and have a nice beer or go spend money that you don't have, because it gives you this exhilarating feelings.
What? Thank you so much for that. Okay, you answered the other question also. I don't need to ask it. What is it that that kills persons when they get the virus? What actually happens to the body? What caused you to die? I mean, because we are accustomed to getting the flu all the time. I mean, we're not dead, right? We see people get the flu all the time, but this is a different. What happens with the body or not with the body that cause people to die from this particular flu?
I'll take a little swing at that. Okay.
Come on,
So,
you're in the middle. You're in the middle. You're in the middle. In the middle of the screen with me, right?
right.
Thank you.
So, most people who contract actually COVID have a mild asymptomatic illness. And that's actually one of the dangers, right? If you think about a virus that's very deadly that kills most people, like Ebola, all right? If most people die from Ebola, it's not going to spread very far. The nasty thing about COVID is that a lot of people have minimal symptoms and then go and spread it to somebody else. The problem is that if you're older, if you have problems with heart failure, lung disease, diabetes, hypertension, issues which are endemic in many of our minority and underserved populations, then your defenses against the virus are not as robust, and you can have what we call a super inflammatory response with this cascade of interleukins, endorphins, stress hormones that cause blood clots, that cause respiratory failure and lead to death. And so the short answer is that the virus, again, this particular virus seems to trigger that immune inflammatory response. And I also just wanted to mention quickly, we kind of blow off the flu, but 60,000 people per year used to die in the United States, used to actually die from the flu. We just never really heard about it, you know, and it wasn't such as a bigger problem as we're seeing with COVID. So that's, again, sort of the short answer to an excellent question.
All right, thank you so much. What are the short and long-term side effects of COVID? Anybody? Dr. Riggs, you can take that. All right.
To the COVID vaccine, right? Hopefully.
Yes, the COVID. Well, I think we don't know really. You know, you can say you don't know because, you know, we only know about that some people get ill, they'll get a little flu here or fluish symptom the day after them take it or something like that. But the long-term one is where we don't know. You know, here's the conspiracy theory. You know, you watch movies all day long, right? Where, you know, sci-fi movie where somebody start giving you something, a whole bunch of people something, and all of a sudden, you know, the aliens come down and eat you because you had that vaccine. You know, if you don't have the vaccine, you're protected against. So these are the kind of concerns that people have. So we don't know that 10, 15, 20 years from now, that this particular flu is not going to turn up and do something that we didn't expect. That's a hesitancy question. Yes, go ahead, Dr. Blake.
Well, I can answer that. Like I would say like a lot of people are kind of concerned about what like the long-term effect are, but like I said before, with these studies of patients that received the vaccine, we're always getting feedback from them, and we always document like any type of like side effects that do take place post-vaccine from the first and second one. So it's always ongoing.
I think it's fair to say we don't know what the long-term effect is. It's brand new, but I think it's also fair to say that, you know, our government are taking every best effort to make sure that what we have is safe. And what I can also say that, you know, we are concerned about long-term, but also just as concerned about the short-term effect of not getting the vaccine. What we do know right now is that the vaccine is saving lives, and the trauma from losing a lot of families. I have a patient this week that told me that about 8 family members of his decided to go on a cruise, and every single one of them got the COVID and on the cruise, and 2 of his nieces died. So you're talking about, I didn't get into detail into the circumstances on whether, what I do know is that most of them weren't vaccinated, but this is a traumatic event for this is my patient. So you already have a psychiatric condition, and now on top of this huge burden of grief that is now disrupting whatever stabilization he had achieved from his regular treatment regimen. So when you lose your family, that's something tragic to have to contend with, as opposed to say, okay, let's get something that could protect us. So I guess people will make that decision.
I for 1 year, I must tell you, for 1 year, I was pretty much locked up in my house, right? And the only thing I would do is go out and walk or run. And I got my second vaccine in April, and a lot of pressure came over me, I must tell you. And so even if to take that pressure, because before I took the vaccine, even just walk outside, I felt like I am breathing in something that I'm not supposed to breathe in. And, so I had high anxiety about being out in the general public. I wouldn't go to the supermarket. My refrigerator only had water, and I started drinking water from the tap and all of these things because I was afraid of going out. And so since I've gotten the vaccine, and I've noticed that numbers are going down, and I said to myself, okay, it's time for me to start going out now. So I've been out, I've been to restaurants, going on the outside, but I feel a lot less stress. I must tell you, I feel a lot less stress. I don't think about the air that I'm breathing in anymore. I don't think about anything falling off the tree on me. And when I go walking, I feel fine. So testimony here, right?
I'd like to add something as well from the experience of the nurses and the physicians taking care of patients when they come to the hospital. So we talk about, okay, so what's the long-term effect of the vaccine? Well, it's been 2 years now, so that's all we know is what we know, right? But what's the long-term effect of COVID? So most people that get COVID, it is a mild symptom. Sometimes they don't even know they have it. We don't know what that might mean later on either. Some people get COVID. I know of a family, 4 of them got COVID. 1 died immediately. 1 ended up in 2 ended up in ICU. 1 did came out of it. 1, after months and months, died also. So that family lost 3 people. Also, we have patients who, it's not just the death. We have people who lose limbs. People have strokes. There are a lot of other things that the media and other people don't talk about. So it's, that people get COVID and the ramifications of it. So I think we also have to look at that as well. Yeah, you might not die, but what latent symptoms and issues are you going to have to live with, and that can emerge later on.
And to that point, Dr. Briggs, there is actually a phenomena called long COVID, which is the sequela. It's only 2 years we're in it, but they're beginning to already see sequela from the people who got COVID in the earlier stage. They have these chronic conditions just from the COVID that will not go away, or significantly having an impairment effect on somebody's lives.
Dr. Robinson, how is the clergy helping with hesitancy? Do they have a responsibility?
I really feel as if, and this is just my personal that everyone is entitled to their own opinion. But I think what we have to do strongly as mental health professionals, as health professionals, is really bring awareness to the mental health benefits, the physical benefits, that coming back into the church because we're vaccinated, the benefit of that to the elderly, especially coming back out, that not only affects them physically, but then socially. That particular population of people have really been affected. I think in Jamaica, a lot of them are still at home, have that at home order. I just learned that last week. But here, I mean, just imagine those that were home and isolated for a long period of time. It really brought them a sense of freedom. For those that I know, there are still a few that haven't, but for the majority of the seniors that I know, they have been vaccinated, and they're very pleased with that, because then they can come back, you know, for example, to their faith community and socialize and just have that fellowship. So I think respecting the fact that people have their different opinions, but also I think it's our responsibility to really bring the facts to the table so that we can go ahead and influence in a direction where we all can gather again safely. And I feel very much like you. When I got a vaccination, I was relieved. You know, my anxiety was gone. I'm still cautious, but it's nothing like it was before. And I think that reduction of stress and anxiety and the ability to socialize a little bit more freely, even though I still wear masks, etc., I think that goes a long way in terms of like your own mental health. Good. So that's how I would respond to that.
In 1966, I was in school, and they put us in a line, right? They put us in a line, and they didn't tell us what we were in line for. But when I got up to the front, I saw this needle. Oh my God, it's the biggest needle I've ever seen in my life. And they took it and they jabbed me, and it's still big mark here.
Yes.
Everybody in the Caribbean knows what that is. Well, they know that they have a mark here. I don't think anybody knows what it was about. They just know that you got it as a 6-year-old child. No. Was that, if it were today, could they do that? And are they still doing that? And also, what's the difference between having, because that seemed to be mandatory for me, you know, we didn't have a choice then. What's the difference then, and what's the difference to know? What's the difference? Why is it's not mandatory if it's a pandemic that's killing lives?
Right. So I'm going to leave the medical people to handle it clinically, but I'm just going to talk about it anecdotally. I think back when we were younger and it was mandatory, it was definitely because of the long research and the proofs that were there, that were evidence, that was why we were doing it. I think, and working in the school system, I really do feel very cautious. This is just my own opinion for the young ones, those that are under 11 that do not have vaccinations, because I feel a sense of protection, of course, because of my faith in God, as well as the vaccination. But then I feel uncertain for those that are coming to school that are, for example, that are 5 and 6 and 7, and in playing with their friends. I mean, I see it all the time. They're not necessarily keeping on their masks. And so you have the issues in schools where sometimes many classrooms are out quarantining because somebody unknowingly has COVID and it impacts the entire class, or sometimes many classes, depending on who is impacted. So I really am concerned for the younger ones. I know that those that are 12 and older have the option. I understand sometimes the uncertainty that those parents have in terms of vaccinating their children, because for us, we're older, we're willing to take the risk, but when it comes to your children, you know, you want to be absolutely certain that it's not going to have any negative effects. So
All right.
that's my anecdotal response, and I'll leave it for the medical professionals to answer.
All right. So let's go medically now. Thank you, Dr. Robbins, for that one. That's what I would say.
I think, just I'm not talking about from the medical side, but from the social standpoint. Back in the day when we were kids, there was not this big emphasis on, rights and upholding that you have choices. So basically, if you're in school, the school is responsible for whatever they say or recommend for you is what you didn't need your parents to sign off on a piece of paper to say you need to do that. The government give the order or to the school, and that's what you get. I had the same experience with you, where we used to run and hide, and they would send the big boys, to come and find us and drag us, and then you get shot. So the social aspect is really different now from then.
Okay, what was it, Doc? What was Dr. Symes? What kind of injection that was?
Probably smallpox, right? And also BCG was another one that we got. But I just wanted to point out that, what happened in the past was very different. We're a different society, again, different rights, as was pointed out, different consent process. And there are some things that happened when we were kids that we look back on fondly that were not so good, right? Like corporal punishment and other things that, are even worse that happened when there wasn't the appropriate supervision and so on. So we just have to also keep that in mind. What I would say is when we think about short-term and long-term side effects of this particular vaccine today, we have a lot of information. We know that, when you get your shot, a fair percentage of people will have an immune response and some soreness and symptoms, and those go away very fast, right? We know that very rarely, some people who get a shot will have a side effect. And what you'll hear on the news are about side effects like having a clot or having a stroke or having Guillain-Barré, which is a weakness, a muscular, neuromuscular weakness. These are potential side effects that happen a couple of weeks after you get your vaccine, which are very rare. So for every individual, right, you have to balance again this idea of what's the benefit? What are the harms? Unfortunately, the benefits of getting vaccine way outweigh any harms that will accrue to you, your family, and community. And that's the thing to keep in mind. I know, again, for instance, that Jay can talk about the fact that when you walk in and take a birth control tablet, right, which gives empowerment to women, it is important in terms of freedom and their ability to make choices about their bodies. But that birth control tablet carries, again, besides the benefits, it carries with it risks, which are way in excess of a vaccine risk. The medicines I give to my HIV patients, which save their lives, there is a lot more side effects and risks with those medicines than, again, we see with the vaccine. And yet people have this uncertainty. And so the solution is not to decide, I'm not going to take it based on what you heard and what you chose to hear on the internet or from friends. It is to have an extended conversation with someone you trust who knows what they're talking about. Excellent
point. I mean, I could say, done it right now, pow! But I got to take some comments here. Father Ward of Holy Family Church says he's doing a great job in encouraging members of the community to take the vaccine. Someone says, I know young gentleman who had a stroke related to COVID and he's now totally dependent on ventilator. Please address the fact that some in our audience state that they are waiting to see how the vaccine affects people first before they take their vaccine. It's like waiting for my blood pressure pill or my brother's or my sister's blood pressure pill to show some kind of symptom before you start taking your blood pressure, right? Your blood pressure pill, right? Because that, you might get a stroke quicker.
Or waiting to put up your hurricane shutters until 4 hours before the hurricane is due to hit. There's a point at which you need to say, what, let me take responsibility for my own health, my family's health, and my communities. And we have a lot of information already on how these things work based on a year of using the vaccines and based on millions, 150 million people in the United States and millions of people around the world. We have that information. So if you're not sure, again, sit down, ask your doctor. If you don't have a doctor, I told you about a free clinic in North Miami that you can come and have a discussion, right? That's my clinic at Center for Haitian Studies.
There you go. I like that. Anyone else wants to add to that?
I'd like to say something.
Come on.
Yeah, I'd like to say, I agree with Dr. Symes was saying. There's like a lot of hesitancy for people thinking that they're waiting for more people to get the vaccine before they do it. But like we said before, when the studies did come out and when we did have the trials, people were already enrolled and they were getting the vaccine. So there is like a good number of people that have received the vaccines prior to the initiation and the rollout. One of the hesitancies I always see, there's actually two hesitancies I'm seeing at the hospital right now, is that people see that the infection rate is going down. So they think maybe I don't need the vaccine at all, but that's the wrong way to think of it. You still need to get the vaccine to get the coverage that's taking place. Yes. Another thing that we're seeing is you get the first dose, you have the side effect. You said, I had a bad reaction from that first dose, so I don't want to get the second dose. Like we said before, from the studies, that benefits versus risks. If you can get the second dose, you actually have a better full coverage compared to just getting one dose by itself. Another issue that I'm also seeing is a person gets the first dose of the Pfizer vaccine and they forgot to get the second dose, and they said, well, I missed the 21-day period, so I'm not going to get the vaccine. You actually can extend that time duration. It's almost like 42 days for you to even get that second dose. So that should not be a concern about missing the second dose.
I like to use science. I've learned in my recent past that as we grew up, we did a lot of things by emotions and by hearsay. People say something and you jump on the bandwagon and stuff, right? And I look at, I'm going to go back to 1918, where in the United States, there were 3.4 million people who died, right? And they did not have a vaccine. Throughout the world, up to 2030, there were like 75 million people who died, something like that, right? And they didn't have a vaccine. And what has happened since here is that we got the vaccine and we were going like a mile a minute with death. And all of a sudden, when the vaccine came in, we are still just over 500,000. We're at 670,000. 75,000 people, and that's been static for a while. And it means that the vaccine is working. It means that the science behind all of this, to me, and this is my personal opinion based on what I see, the things that I read, that the vaccine is working. It's helping people. And though I don't know what it's going to do to me 10 years from now, I don't even know if I'm going to live tomorrow. So I'm protecting who I am today, and I hope that those words can get to somebody's ears. Are you guys?
Yeah, thank you very much for saying that, because actually right now the incidences are on the rise again. A lot more patients are being admitted for COVID, and a lot more patients are going into the ICUs again. Hospitals have to start opening additional floors again, so we're trending in the wrong direction. So we really need everyone who is in the sound of our voice. If you have not been vaccinated, as Dr. Symes has said numerous times, don't get your information from the internet. Don't get it from, some strange person that calls himself a physician that you don't know. Speak to someone who you do know. Speak to someone who you trust. I have people, it's funny, they keep sending me things from, well, for me to debunk. Well, take a look at this. What do you think about this? And I have to say the same thing, all over again. But it's, again, go to a trusted source. Please, please, I'm begging you. The life you save may be your own and your family.
Question.
I got.
Oh,
just
go ahead,
something quickly.
Go ahead.
That just to tag on to Dr. Biggs, we would be remiss if we did not address the fact and admit to the fact that there are a lot of healthcare professionals out there who are still refusing to take the vaccine. There are a lot of healthcare professionals, licensed people, physicians, nurses, social workers, all of the licensed people, and they're saying that they're waiting and see. So how can we tell our patients and the community that you should get the vaccine when we are not? When if they ask you if you have it, you're telling them no. So, it's disingenuous, to say the least. So I'm pleading to our colleagues out there, and hopefully they're in the sound of my voice, because I talked to two people this week, two professionals who said they have not taken the vaccine and they're still, and I was really, really shocked. So we need to step up to the plate and practice what we preach. We're here telling people to do it, and then some of us are not doing it.
Agreed. Well said. Question. I got the COVID virus. I was ill. I'm out of the hospital. I'm fine. Should I take the virus? Should I take the vaccine?
So what will happen is that when you catch COVID and survive, right, you do have a period, your body mounts an antibody response, and you will have a period of protection that extends for about 3 to 4 to 5 months. And then what we've seen is that that antibody response will start to decline, or it may not protect you against other variants where the virus has mutated. And so we strongly recommend that if you have had COVID, that you get vaccinated anyway, right? Because we keep seeing all of these different variants which are popping up. And we also know that your natural immunity that you had will wane after about 3 to 6 months. So the answer is yes. If you've had COVID, go get the next shot. Anyway.
Dr. Blake, what are you going to say? You want to add something to that?
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing what Dr. Symes was saying as well.
All right, great. Question, what is herd immunity and why is it important?
Herd immunity is probably what happened with the Spanish flu. After 75 million people died, which is a significant portion of the population back in 1918, lots and lots of people got sick and got better and had immunity. But again, the cost, right, at that point was to develop herd immunity, that 70–80% of the population are immune against the virus, and now the virus has no natural place to go to sink its teeth into and to infect. That's basically what happened back in 1918. At what terrible cost, right?
Awesome. So we shouldn't wait for herd immunity. That's what you're saying.
We can't, right? We just can't.
So people stop using the term. Oh my God. Did you have something to say, Dr. Robinson?
You
Well
know,
said.
but you know, just in terms of herd immunity too, if you think about it, like most of the people that's being admitted now to the hospital is with the new variant. It's not the old one. So, you know, that is the whole issue, that we can't just sit around and wait for people to die off all these new variants. There's another one now in South America, Lambda, you know, that's coming on. So I mean, we if we don't stop this thing in its tracks, virus does what virus does. Virus mutate. That's what they do. So if we don't stop it, they're just going to keep going. So the only way to stop them is to get vaccinated.
One last question, and then I'm gonna have you guys wrap it up. Okay. All right. So one last question. Pretend I'm a woman. I want to get pregnant. When do I take the vaccine? If I'm pregnant, can I take the vaccine? 2 questions.
So early on in the course of this process, there were a lot of questions about vaccinations in pregnant women, which were underrepresented in clinical trials, right? We now have the answer. The vaccine is safe to get during pregnancy. You probably don't want to get the Johnson & Johnson vaccine because you're naturally hypercoagulable during pregnancy. But the other 2 vaccines, Pfizer, Moderna, very safe, very effective. And just think about it, right? You don't want to deliver your child, be unvaccinated, and your child or you get sick after delivery, right? It's just it's a terrible situation all around. So the vaccines we now know are safe during pregnancy. You should get them at any time during pregnancy, and it protects you, your family, and your newborn.
Dr. Robinson, 1 minute. Wrap up for me, please. I'm going to go around the room.
Okay. So in the event that there are persistent signs and symptoms of a mental health conditions, such as maybe not sleeping well, not enjoying things you used to, just any major changes, even like sadness, depression, etc., please, please, please reach out to not just your support system, but a counselor, psychologist, psychiatrist, depending on if you already have a diagnosis of a mental illness. And then there are also other resources that you can find even on the internet, such as the National Suicide Prevention Line, and even I believe is a National Domestic Violence Hotline. So there are so much resources out there. Please use them, especially if you have these symptoms or if you know of anyone that may have these symptoms. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Dr. Ellis?
Yes, I second that. And in addition, we need to ask, especially people of faith, leaders of faith, to kind of be available for people in an empathetic way, to listen and be supportive, open the doors for communication, so that, you know, some people may not want to go to a professional right away, but, you know, other places such as, you know, your rabbi, your pastor, whatever, you know, be available and guide them in the right direction.
Thank you so much. Dr. Biggs?
Yes, well, first of all, thank you all so much. Thank you to my esteemed colleagues on the panel and for all of you out there that are listening. I do want to say—
Could you, in your wrap-up, also just thank Jackson Systems for me, please?
Absolutely. I definitely thank Jackson Health System for supporting this worthy cause and for always doing what we do at Jackson. We care for our community, right? And also would like to refer you to the Jackson website. There is Keeping You Safe, which has all the information about COVID, a lot of resources, videos, links to the CDC, World Health Organization. So please do utilize those resources. And again, this is an individual choice, but at this time, last year, this time in July was the worst time for us at Jackson, our second or third peak where we were really going crazy. Half of our hospital was COVID, all COVID floors. And at that time, we were all praying for a vaccine. We were praying for a vaccine. Now we have it. Please, please don't let it go to waste. Please take the vaccine, and again, reach out to somebody you trust in order to get your question answered. And we're always available through Jackson. We're always speaking to our community. Thank you.
So much. Dr. Blake.
Once again, it's an honor to be here to talk on this forum. I just want to encourage everybody to get the vaccine, also get the fully vaccinated, the first and the second dose. You're actually seeing good data from the information from the Pfizer vaccine, which is showing that there was actually almost like 80 to 90% coverage for the Delta virus. And you're actually going to see more data for the Moderna and also for the Johnson & Johnson. It's actually going to show good coverage for the Delta virus as well. Once again, reach out to professionals. So if you have any questions, and not just rely like on social media or YouTube. Talk to people at Jackson Baptist and the various health systems. Also, the CDC and the Department of Health also has excellent resources that you can get information from.
Thank you. And Dr. Symes.
Okay, well, I'm going to give you my top three, right? The three reasons you should get vaccinated. Number one, protect yourself. The things that you were doing before, wearing a mask, they're not going to work so well anymore as other people let down their guard and as you have more infectious variants out there. Number two, protect yourself, but protect your community and those around you. That's family, friends, loved ones. It's like paying taxes, right? If everybody doesn't jump on board and do it, it just don't work quite as well, okay? And then number three, right, very important, there are going to be structural adjustments that are really important, like travel, like new employment, which, you know, if you have your vaccine, it's going to be much easier, right? And so those are the three reasons I always tell people to get vaccinated. No one will ever tell you that there is absolutely no risk, but you always have to weigh the benefits versus the harms for you. And this is one situation where the benefits are just really, really clear.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Bev, come online for me, please. Come on the camera for me. I want to say thanks to our Consul General to Miami, Oliver Mayer, Mr. Oliver Mayer. Thank you so much. Thank you, Cheryl Winter, for allowing us to use the CG services of the CG. And you know, I want to say a special thanks to Dr. Beverly Frey, who has worked really, really hard in putting this together. And I know that she's been out there contacting you. And yes, thank you so much, Dr. Beverly, for this. It's really a very, very informative session. And it's recorded, and we're going to take it and we're going to spread it across the world. Okay, so everybody should get to hear this particular session. I want to also thank you persons, the persons on the outside who are on Facebook, on YouTube, and the other platforms for joining and for asking questions. I know we couldn't get to everybody's questions because we had some here that we had to deal with, but we tried to deal with to get the best that we saw, not the best, but the ones that pop in front of me as fast as it came. So thank you guys. I want to thank Jackson Health System. I want to say it the right way. Jackson Health Systems for providing us with this platform, with this plethora of skill and expertise. And oh my God, especially that they come from the Caribbean. I'm so proud. I'm very, very proud. Very, very proud. And so thank you, Jackson Health Systems, and thank you, Beverly. Have a wonderful evening, everybody, and thank you again.
Bye.
Bye-bye.